So you're probably wondering, Tucker, it's almost the playoffs. Why are we talking about a trade rumor video? We can't even make trades until the offseason. This would be why. Let's go ahead and put the tweet on screen here. The Brooklyn Nets reportedly turned down a trade offer from the Houston Rockets that included Jaylen Green and multiple first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. That's why. For those of you who don't know, I'm a Nets fan, so this is particularly infuriating given the current state of the Brooklyn Nets. And what I mean by the current state of the Brooklyn Nets is that they are one of the worst organizations in the entire league. They're not well set up for the future, and they have played like the Washington Wizards for about 2 months now. They have been one of the worst teams in the league for about 2 months, and they're not going to make the play-in game. They don't have their first-round pick. It's actually owned by the Houston Rockets, and clearly there is a lack of direction in the front office because decision-making like this doesn't make any sense. Now, to be fair, the report just says multiple first-round picks. We don't necessarily know what the offer was. We don't know what the picks were. We don't know what the protections were. And we know that the Nets really highly value Mikal Bridges. They turned down 4 first-round picks from the Memphis Grizzlies for Mikal Bridges when they traded for him in exchange for Kevin Durant last trade deadline. Here's the problem with all of this, though, okay? This is like one of 5 or 6 different reports that we got at the deadline about what was offered in exchange for Mikal Bridges. And one of those reports mentioned that the Rockets were willing to give back most of, if not all, of the Nets' first-round picks that they own, pick swaps and all that, in exchange for Mikal Bridges, which is just a complete franchise do-over for a franchise that desperately needs it. Now, on the surface, Mikal Bridges is worth a lot, and maybe getting your own picks back isn't necessarily top-tier value for Mikal Bridges. He's had a season where he's definitely not been as good as you would have hoped, but he's a really good complimentary player, good two-way player on a great contract as well. There's a reason teams want Mikal Bridges. But if you're Brooklyn, the ability to reset everything and get your own picks back and be bad and get good players in the building as a result of being bad opens up an avenue for team building that they just don't currently have on the roster. And looking back on it now, this is an incredibly interesting rumor. There's a reason this rumor is coming out now, and it's because Jaylen Green is playing out of his mind. He's averaging like 27 points a game in his last 10 games as of the recording of this video. He's averaging like 24 a game post All-Star break. The Rockets are on their way to potentially making the play-in game. As of the recording of this video, they won 8 straight games, and the Nets could have had Jaylen Green, multiple first-round picks, in exchange for Mikal Bridges. And it's interesting to look back on that rumor now, because where would the Rockets be now had they made the trade for Bridges? Şengün goes down. Jaylen Green has become the primary reason, really, that they've been so good. Him, and then obviously having Jabari Smith playing the 5, some other contributions from some other guys. Where would we be if this was a trade that the Nets actually accepted? And then also, one of the reasons the Nets are so bad is because they don't have a creator. Like, Mikal Bridges is a fine offensive player. They have a couple of guards. Like, Cam Thomas is pretty good, depending on your opinion of him. But having someone like Jaylen Green that can create for everyone else is like by far the biggest issue with the roster in Brooklyn right now. And yes, trading away Mikal Bridges, kind of weakens the rest of the roster. But getting someone that has been averaging 24 game post All-Star break plus multiple first-round picks in exchange for Mikal Bridges definitely would have helped with where the team is going in the future. And it's just an unfortunate situation for Brooklyn because they made it clear that they weren't trading Mikal Bridges at the deadline. They made that clear when they traded for him in exchange for Kevin Durant last trade deadline as well. They are committed to keeping him there. And some of you might be wondering, why are they so committed to keeping Mikal Bridges? It doesn't necessarily have to do with his value on the floor. I mean, he's good. Like I said, he's on a good contract, good two-way player. He's having to play too much of an offensive role for this team right now, and that's definitely hurting his efficiency and things like that. But the Nets believe that whether it be via a trade or in free agency, them having Mikal Bridges on the roster makes them an attractive star destination in the offseason, at next year's trade deadline, and in the following offseason as well. They believe, probably correctly, that there are stars around the league that would really like to play with Mikal Bridges because of his complementary skill set, and they feel like having him on the roster is more valuable than just the actual value that he provides on the floor, because their whole goal over the next couple of seasons to try and get back to where they were is to attract stars to Brooklyn. They think that having the location be where it is, they are still a star destination, and Mikal Bridges is a huge part of that. My problem with that is not necessarily the reason, but one of the reasons why the Nets were a potential star destination in 2019 when they got Kyrie and they got KD was the team was decent. They were like 42 and something, and they weren't like a contender by any means, but there were a lot of complementary pieces there that would make you think, okay, we can do something here, as in this case, Kyrie and KD, 2 stars, show up. There's complementary pieces, there's future assets, there's all this stuff. And the Nets don't really have that right now. I mean, yes, they have, some good wings. They have Mikal Bridges. Nick Claxton is someone they're probably going to bring back, and they have future assets from other teams. They have future first-round picks. They have actually a good amount of them. But the situation is just not not even comparable to where they were in 2019. And if your reasoning for keeping Mikal Bridges is to attract stars, I don't think the Nets are a top 5 star destination around the league right now when it comes to trades or free agency. And so if you're overvaluing Mikal Bridges, and in this case, turning down a trade offer that you should not have turned down, certainly in hindsight, that shows just like I said, just a lack of direction and poor decision-making by the front office in Brooklyn, which is a huge, huge concern. And again, the reason that this is all coming up is because Jaylen Green's been playing really well. If Jaylen Green was averaging 16 points a game and shooting 35% from the floor post All-Star break, this wouldn't be as big of a deal, right? But it also shines a light on some of those reports that we got that the Nets could have just reset everything. It was an unbelievable offer that Brooklyn got, reportedly, to just get their first-round picks back from Houston and trade away Mikal Bridges. And I understand having an idea of, hey, Mikal Bridges is here, we want to try and attract stars. One, I don't necessarily agree with that mindset, but two, maybe you could kind of, steer in a different direction here and say, okay, this opens up a completely different path for us and one that is probably better off for us rather than just trying to attract these stars. And Houston as well, adding Mikal Bridges to that roster is something that they've been trying to do for like a year now. They brought in Dylan Brooks, Van Fleet, they brought in Ime Udoka. The young guys are playing really well, and they clearly believe that having someone like Mikal Bridges on the roster would help them tremendously as a two-way player, as a veteran, as someone that's on a good contract over the next couple of seasons. And it's interesting to think about how Brooklyn values Mikal Bridges as an asset and how other teams value Mikal Bridges as an asset, and the difference in those two things where teams clearly really like him and the Nets are still even way above whatever that asking price would be, to the point where apparently Mikal Bridges is basically untouchable. And all of this is really important information as we go into the offseason, where maybe there is still a deal to be made between Brooklyn and between Houston. Maybe there is still an opportunity to make a similar kind of deal in the offseason. The Nets, like I said, do not have their own first round pick. In this draft, they don't control any of their first round picks over the next couple of seasons. Those are controlled by Houston, and maybe they take the opportunity to move Jaylen Green and some stuff in exchange for Mikal Bridges, depending on how the season ends. And then, the Nets there's just so many question marks for them right now, and it's difficult as a fan to really be excited about the future of the team. Maybe in a year or 2 years, they do have a star or two, and Mikal Bridges is still there, and I'm completely wrong about all this stuff, but a team that continues to go through as many head coaches as they do, doesn't change anything in the front office, loses guys in the front office that are highly regarded around the league to go to some other spots. And it seems like every year there's some kind of deal or some kind of rumor report that comes out like this that shows that the front office mishandled the situation. You go back to the first James Harden trade, obviously trading away all their picks. That didn't go well. Could have gone much better, but it didn't go well. And then the Harden trade where they get Ben Simmons in exchange from Philadelphia. And it gets exhausting, right? Every single year when you look at, there's a new report, there's a new trade rumor. And every single time the Nets are the ones that screwed it up, right? So we'll just kind of have to see what happens with the Nets moving forward. I do think people are undervaluing the amount of first round picks that they do have. They have those Phoenix picks. They have a Philly pick. They have a Dallas pick. They have a couple of different things still working for them. And maybe their vision for keeping Mikal Bridges and for adding stars will ultimately end up being the right choice. But when you look at rumors and things like this, it's really disheartening, one, as a fan, and two, incredibly interesting to think about where Houston was on Jaylen Green a couple of weeks ago, 6-8 weeks ago, compared to where they are now on him and potentially pushing towards the play-in is just a unbelievable turn of events that makes this a really interesting trade rumor to look back on.